You're supposed to start talking when the applause stops. Because this, taking it in moment of yours is really kind of creepy.
Let me tell you about Jonas.
Was he swallowed by a whale? Because I think I've heard this one before.
Jonas is 19 years old. He studies law in Munich. In his spare time, he likes to play soccer. Jonas has a secret which he thinks he cannot share with anyone, not even with his best friend or with his parents. He's just too afraid of anger, rejection, and repulsion.
He's never seen Reservoir Dogs, has he? Yeah, that is indeed a cardinal sin.
Jonas knows that he has to suppress his sexual drive for his entire life. And he also knows that there will never be a loving and fulfilling partnership that he can enter.
Okay. And why might that be, exactly?
Because Jonas is a pedophile.
Yeah. Jonas is right to suppress those urges, never act on them, and, hopefully, is engaging in major therapy to ensure that he never, ever acts on them. And he hasn't ever acted on those urges, has he?
He's only attracted to female children between the ages of 6 and 12 years. But since he's aware of the consequences for the children, he has never given in to his sexual drive.
I certainly hope that is true. And the fact that he's aware how wrong it would be to attempt to do something to a child shows he's at least cognizant that there is something very wrong with those urges of his.
What is pedophilia?
You just described it a moment ago. A sexual attraction to young children. Why are you asking me?
And what is it not?
Well, it is not an acceptable set of behaviors in civilized society. It is not something that should either be encouraged or have excuses made for its undertaking. And it is also not legal.
In the ICD-10, the International Classification System for Illnesses, pedophilia is coded as the sexual preference for pre-adolescent children. It is listed under the sexual disorders. Whether the persistent occurrence of sexual thoughts and feelings for pre-adolescent children have been acted upon or not is not relevant to the diagnosis.
What? Not having any outward symptoms of a disease is not relevant to a diagnosis of possessing that disease? You don't say.
Like every other sexual orientation.
Oh no. Oh no, 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 no. No, 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 no. No, 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 no.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Sexual orientation. You just placed pedophilia in the same category as a sexual orientation. A sexual orientation refers to having a sexual and/or romantic attraction to persons of one or both genders. And in the civilized world, that means persons of one or both of the genders who are of legal age and consent. Pedophilia is a mental disorder that focuses on underage children for sexual gratification, which is both morally abhorrent and illegal. But I suppose we have now entered the magical land of apologia.
Pedophilia can have different characteristics. For example, it can be heterosexual, it can be homosexual, bisexual. Some pedophiles are exclusively attracted to children. Others are not exclusively attracted to children, but they're also sexually interested in adults.
You just countered your own claim that it's a sexual orientation by citing sexual orientations in regards to the kinds of children pedophiles might prefer. You can't say it's a sexual orientation in combination with other sexual orientations. And it is not a sexual orientation. It is a mental illness.
The vast majority of all pedophiles are men, about 99%. Within the male population, 1 to 2% are considered to be pedophiles. This translates to about 60 million people worldwide. This is as much as the population of Italy or of South Africa.
Are we heading for an argumentum ad populum here? Because a lot of people think or behave one way, it needs to be normalized and accepted in the same way as a sexual orientation? Well, 60 million people is only 0.7% of the world's population. So, the other 99.3% of us have to accept pedophilia as an acceptable mindset? Is that what I am to understand?
Therefore, pedophilia is not an irrelevant phenomenon we can't simply ignore.
It is not ignored. It is prosecuted in most places when it's discovered to have happened, or if nothing can be done legally, the people involved are utterly and totally shamed and exiled from most polite society. But that's not what you meant, is it?
Chances every one of you knows at least one pedophile are higher than that you don't know anyone.
Chances are that I might know a serial murderer. So what? That makes their urges something I just need to accept?
We haven't found out yet why pedophilia occurs. There are biological, social, and psychological factors to it. It occurs unrelated to social economical status and unrelated to educational level. So generally speaking, anyone could be born a pedophile.
Yes, pedophiles. They're just like you and me, except that they feel an urge to rape innocent and vulnerable children. That's all.
It is crucial to understand the difference between pedophilia and child sexual abuse, which is illegal and must always be. Pedophilia is only the sexual preference for pre-adolescent children.
Okay, on that point, I will agree. The psychological disorder can be mutually exclusive from actually enacting the crime of child sexual abuse. This is very true. But if our speaker's goal here is to normalize pedophilia and redefine it as a sexual orientation alongside heterosexuality and homosexuality, how can she possibly avoid arguing for the acceptance of its outward expression as well?
Think about it for yourself. What do you think?
You're listening to what I think right now.
What percentage of child molesters are pedophiles? Have a guess.
100%.
Is it 20%?
100%.
40? 60,
100%.
maybe even 80%?
100%.
In fact, scientific studies indicate that only 20 to 30% of all child molesters are pedophiles.
Let's say your scientific studies are correct. For the sake of argument, only 20 to 30% of child molesters are pedophiles. So, this makes the crimes of the non-pedophiles what? Worse because they weren't doing it for a valid reason?
The vast majority of perpetrators are not pedophiles, but they're sexually interested in adults. Children can easily become victims of child sexual abuse because of their loyalty and because of ease of access.
Okay, tell me something. Can a child tell the difference of whether or not they're being abused by a pedophile or a non-pedophile? Is one a more loving experience than the other? Good Christ, this is making me fucking ill.
Not every pedophile abuses children. And not everyone who abuses children is a pedophile. Differentiating between these two groups is essential.
Essential for what?
Let me be very clear here.
By all means.
Abusing children is wrong without any doubt.
But
a pedophile who doesn't abuse children has done nothing wrong.
Yes, okay, I agree with you there. But I'm still waiting to hear how having a predilection for underage children qualifies as a sexual orientation rather than being a mental disorder.
I want to quickly summarize where we are at the moment. According to current research, pedophilia is an unchangeable sexual orientation, just like, for example, heterosexuality.
Is zoophilia a sexual orientation, then? Is being sexually aroused by a train station a sexual orientation? How many other psychosexual disorders shall we begin normalizing in our society?
No one chooses to be a pedophile. No one can cease being one. The difference between pedophilia and other sexual orientations is that living out this sexual orientation will end in a disaster.
Okay, let's cut to the chase. What is it exactly that you are proposing here? Aside from trying to redefine a criminal compulsion, which affects 0.7% of the human population with as common a thing as heterosexuality, what remedy are you pitching here?
So let's think about Jonas again. How can we help him not to cause such a disaster? How can we help him not to live out his sexual urges? How can we prevent child sexual abuse?
By having everyone who is diagnosed as being a pedophile register with the state as a potential offender and restricting them from having interactions with any children without supervision. That is my reflexive 1984-ish answer to that question. If you're being serious.
In fact, scientific studies indicate that one of the strongest predictors for child sexual abuse committed by pedophiles is social isolation. People who can't tell anyone that they're pedophiles logically won't get any help. For example, they can't tell their friends that they can't go to the beach because children in swimsuits might be there as well. They can't get support for situations they might not control entirely. And they can never be completely frank with someone else.
There is doctor-patient confidentiality for that. And seeking help is the responsibility of the individual. not societies.
At the moment, we live in a world that already excludes pedophiles because of their preference alone. Someone who's lonely and excluded from society has little to lose and is at much higher risk to commit a crime, like, for example, child sexual abuse.
So, if a pedophile abuses a child, it's society's fault for failing to embrace the pedophile. It's not the pedophile's fault for not resisting their urges and not seeking help. Got it.
We can make Jonas feel that he stays a valuable member of our society, although he's a pedophile.
Jonas's feelings about himself are his problem. The operative term in self-esteem is self. No one else is responsible for anyone else's self-esteem.
Right now, most of us feel discomfort when we think about this scenario. And most of us feel discomfort when we think about pedophiles.
Golly, I wonder why that might be. Why is it that we all have this visceral, instinctual, gut reaction of disgust when we are asked to ponder the nuances of child rape? I have no idea.
But just like pedophiles, we are not responsible for our feelings. We do not choose them.
We're not. We are all not responsible for our own feelings. Okay, well, is it just me, or is a situation where someone is held not responsible for their feelings an example of mental illness?
But we are responsible for our actions, and we must make a decision. It is in our responsibility to reflect and to overcome our negative feelings about pedophiles and to treat them with the same respect we treat other people with. We should accept that pedophiles are people who have not chosen their sexuality and who, unlike most of us, will never be able to live it out freely if they want to lead an upright life.
Okay, I am going to stop there. I have listened to more than I care to anyway. Here are my closing thoughts. Are pedophiles inherently criminals? No. Should people diagnosed as pedophiles, who otherwise do not act on their impulses, be treated inhumanely or unfairly in society? No. Is pedophilia something that should be considered as a normal sexual orientation, akin to heterosexuality?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Pedophilia is a mental disorder. It is a compulsion that, in its execution, requires the victimization of innocent people. Like the urges of a serial killer, a serial rapist, a con artist, it is not an acceptable or normal way to see the world or treat the people in it. The only thing pedophiles should be receiving from the rest of us is the legal and social discouragement to ever act on their impulses. And the only thing that pedophiles should be doing in response to their urges is to seek therapy. As always, thank you for watching.